Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. I should tell my guest what that means. It means if somebody tells you it's free, you better check. Anyway, my guest, as you can tell, is Treasurer Mike Piechiak, who is going to be talking. First half hour, we're going to talk about the job as treasurer, and the second half hour, we're going to talk about his candidacy, repeat. How many years have you been treasurer?
Well, I'll be running for my third term, so I've been
Really?
treasurer for about 3.5 years.
That's great. You've made an impact because it seems longer to me.
Well,
Like, you've always
Probably
been
feels
there.
longer to everyone that's on my staff,
Probably to
too.
you. No, you have a great staff.
Well, yeah, definitely,
That
100%.
you do. That you do. Every time I've called up with some one of my rather moronic comments, they always are very kind and always answer me. So I'm going to just read this off, and we could just come back and talk a little bit about some of this. You manage state finances, including investments, debt, and public funds, and handles programs like unclaimed property and financial literacy. I have to really talk to you about that. And you're located in Montpelier. You're the chief investment officer, retirement systems, and there are 3 of those, and which I am a beneficiary of. Thank you very much. And the unclaimed properties, which you always do ads, I kind of giggle when I see them. I say, oh, it's that time of year again.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. You look like you like this job.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a great job. I mean, I think it sits at a great intersection of like public policy and finance and business and some politics. And I really sort of enjoy all aspects of that.
That's
So
right.
Public policy as well.
You're kind to say some politics. Depending on what the issue, it could be
All politics.
all politics. I've sat in on a couple of legislative testimonies. Anyway, so you have how many people working for you? Do you know that offhand?
There's about 50 people.
Oh, is it great?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say enough about them. They're wonderful. So I wanted to talk a little bit about literacy.
Yeah.
And I'm involved with Campaign for Vermont, and that has become, after we just met with our advisory board, one of our primary issues going forward is literacy. And I just said, oh,
Nice.
Mike Pieciak. What are you doing with the financial literacy?
Yeah.
program?
So, I mean, there have been a couple of programs and partnerships that we've done in the last 3.5 years. The first one was with the Vermont Network for Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault.
Oh, interesting.
So, the agency against, they're called the Network now.
Right.
But the Network, we worked with them and M&T Bank to get a program going where M&T Bank provided the funding. It was $100,000. The network did the training for advocates for them to get financial literacy skills, and then they went and taught people that were the victims of sexual assault or domestic violence about financial literacy. And when they went through the program, they used some of that $100,000 to also fund an account for them too at the successful completion of the program. And I mention that because when you think about the impact of financial literacy and also financial resources, those that are in a domestic violence situation sometimes are trapped because of the
they can't
economics of the
support
scenario.
themselves.
So trying to provide an avenue for individuals to have financial freedom,
Right.
which literally means physical freedom in some cases too, was a really important initiative. And we announced that, I think it was back in February of 2024. We announced it with the governor actually. And then last year we did a partnership that's carrying over into this year with New England Federal Credit Union and the Department of Corrections, where they've been providing financial literacy training in correctional facilities.
Oh, perfect.
For the same reason. People are, it's funny, I've gone to a couple of the sessions and they ask, what are you excited about? What are you worried about? And you would think that, I don't know, you'd think what they're worried about, who knows, right? But what they always say is like they're worried about getting out because they're worried about getting back in because they don't have the tools to be successful outside of prison. So this is one tool that hopefully can help them both in terms of financial literacy, but then also the credit union will provide them an account as well, which is oftentimes a barrier to getting banked. It's just that people won't bank people that have been incarcerated or they don't know how to get access to a bank account.
Yeah.
So
There's a program, and I forget the name of it. I was part of it. They held it in Barry when I was working for Barry City. And it said, you're being let out of prison today. Here's the list of things you have to accomplish.
yeah,
Get a job, get housing. But
like everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Like I
did
had
miserable in it because it's overwhelming. And here
Yeah.
I am play acting, and a lot of us just failed. It was just too much. And
Yeah, no
when
doubt.
you have any idea what they're going through,
For sure.
you know?
So, those are programs where we found, unique populations that are vulnerable.
Right.
We're supportive of the financial literacy requirement for all high schools to have financial literacy.
Yep.
Because I do think that it is just so critical at that age, in high school, even younger, to start the conversation around money and to start the conversation around credit and credit cards and student loans and jobs and prospects. But, I always go to the Winooski High School. Courtney Pieciak is a financial literacy teacher there, and she's wonderful. And she does an end of the year program. And every time I go, I learn something from the students or get some sort of inspiration. But first year I went, this young student, they asked, well, why do you think financial literacy is so important? And he said, well, I've got big plans for myself, and I know that it starts with having like a secure financial base, right?
Good thinking.
And it's absolutely right, though, right? Like if you don't have that strong financial base, there are certain job opportunities that you decide not to take because you can't do it financially or you feel handcuffed in a certain occupation or profession. And then the second time I went back to Courtney Paquette's class, they were doing this student presentation where one student said that she wanted to become a pediatric dermatologist. And she had to describe all of the steps to get there and then sort of what her retirement would look like at 65. So it was,
great.
going to college, going to medical school, going to residency, having a fellowship.
Paying off all the loans.
Well, then at age 39, she would have this huge salary.
Right.
She'd start to pay the loans off. She'd start to retire, her retirement a little bit later. And then at age 65, she would have $4 million in retirement. And then the next guy went and he was talking about being a master electrician, and he needed 6 months or a year of training, and he could start working right away. And his salary was pretty modest, but it was pretty good at $77,000. And then he goes, and then at age 65, I'll have $4 million in retirement, right?
Whoa.
And they didn't mean to do this, but they had dramatically different career paths that ended up at the same financial point.
Excellent.
And it just is an opportunity, I think, for kids to think about what is the future they want, knowing that there are different economic and financial paths to get there.
That's great. I love it. You and I talked, I think it was one time when you were on the show, talked about getting kids trained, and me, on the stock market, to understand the stock market, because speaking of pensions and stuff, that it all comes into play. And there are many of us that don't really understand when they're doing bullish or. I would love to know basics about the stock market.
Yeah, well, particularly this month, it's been a little bit turbulent, but.
Yeah, for sure. Every time we see the red and green arrows,
Yeah.
my husband's over in the corner going, "Oh no," sort of.
Well, it's so critical. I mean, but knowing about that's really important,
Yeah.
right? Because I'll just give one example on our pension funds, right? You, as a pensioner, have put in money every paycheck as the employee contribution, right? And the state of Vermont matches that contribution every pay period as well. And it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money out of your paycheck. It's a lot of money out of the state's budget that goes into the pension fund. But when you start to pull a pension from the state and they give you $1, 67 cents of that dollar was earned in the stock market, not from what you put away. So the majority of what you're getting is actually from the return. So that just shows how important it is to invest and invest wisely. But most importantly, sometimes people get worried about making the right investment.
Right.
But if you're young, pretty much the only wrong investment is not to be invested. Like, you need to be invested.
See, that's what I
in the
think people
market.
need to understand, so that they're more comfortable
Yeah.
with leaving it there, because that's the key, right? Is to leave it and let it grow.
Yeah,
And weather the ups and downs.
exactly. I mean,
You really need to understand it, and I just wish I had had some education on it. And when you're young and in high school,
there are
what a
better
great
things to do.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Anyway, so how are our pension plans doing? Because are they still in the A plus rating, or?
Yeah, well, so the bond rating is very strong, right?
Right.
And the pension system, which does play a lot into the bond rating, the teachers is about 73% funded. It's the highest it's been funded
Great.
since 2016. And then the teachers is getting better as well. It's at about 64%, I think, in that ballpark. And that's the highest it's been since 2011.
Great,
So
good for you.
they're moving up. Last 5 years, they've seen, steady increase in the funded ratio. It all ties back to, the pension reform efforts that happened, about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And we did an analysis in our office last year and found that because of those pension reform efforts, where the state of Vermont committed $200 million in one-time money, to put into the pension. They also committed to increased contributions. Employees also committed to increased contributions, so more money going into the system.
Right.
And then the state also agreed to do something called a pension plus payment. So we just pay an extra $15 million to the teachers and $15 million to the state on top of what we're required to pay to try to pay it down. But it's a big upfront investment, but we've determined that it saved almost $6 billion in taxpayer dollars over the life of the pension funds, through 2038. So, with the pension system, you got to stay on top of it. You got to make sure once things are moving in a direction you don't want them to move, that you course correct quickly. But we've been in a really good, steady state. One thing about the stock market, VPIC, the Vermont Pension Investment Commission that invests all of the funds for the pension, they just reported that last year they earned 14.1% return, which is double the assumed rate of return of 7%. And another way to think about how well they did is on their assets, they earned $1 billion year over year. So they earned $1 billion, which is a significant amount, highest the system has ever earned.
Is Tom Galanka still?
Yeah, he's still the chair.
If he was in the private sector, I think he'd be making a little more money than he's making now. So we are just so fortunate to have somebody of Tom's caliber.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
helping
people
us.
that step up and do that kind of public service,
incredible.
it's really important.
Yeah.
And I always have to appreciate folks that have turned down private opportunities to
Well, and
help the
especially,
public.
I mean, Tom is just I just think he's so brilliant. And he's very good at explaining things too.
Yeah.
I mean, when you ask him a question, he doesn't talk down or over, he just explains it to you, which is great to be able to do that. So, other thing that which I love, the Vermont Saves program.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that? Because that must have bailed out a whole bunch of nonprofits and other people.
So, the problem that we're trying to solve for was that, a generation ago, a lot of people working in the private sector would have had a pension system, through even a relatively small corporation or company would have had a private pension system. But a lot of the private sector has moved away from providing that to something more akin to a 401k or something like that. So that puts the burden of retirement on you as the employee, knowing how to invest, putting enough money away for your retirement. But then there's a subsection of employees that don't even have that. They don't have access to retirement at all through their employer. And that was the population we were looking to help, because all of the studies that are out there say that if you don't have access to retirement through your employer, you basically don't save for your retirement, and you're on track to have a much less dignified retirement when you reach retirement age, if you can retire at all. So we estimated there are tens of thousands of Vermonters that fell into this population. They work for small businesses and small nonprofits. It's not that these businesses are doing something bad by any means. They themselves can't afford an expensive 401k plan or other kind of retirement plan. They want to, but oftentimes they just can't afford to do it. So by doing this proposal, which was called Vermont Saves, we passed it in the legislature and it passed unanimously, and we're able to get it up and running in about a year with the partnership with Colorado. We partnered with them to be able to set it up, not just as quickly and as timely and as efficiently as we did, but I don't know if we could have set it up on our own as Vermont. We really needed the size of not just Colorado, but some of the other states that have joined in that collaboration as well. So now it's been up and running for about a year. We have about 2,500 employers that are in the system.
Wow.
We have just over 7,000 individual people that are saving, and we have more people, coming online every week. That number keeps going up. And that's great, and collectively they've saved about $9 million. Wow. So we expect that 7,000 to keep growing, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. We expect that 9 million to be, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million over the next few years. But the thing that I really like about it is that when you look at the demographics of who is saving, 55% of people are age 40 or younger. 30% of people are under the age of 30. So a lot of young people saving. When you look at the age breakdown, a lot of people in their early 20s saving, people in their teens saving, and folks that are putting away just $100 or $200 a month at that age, it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars when they reach retirement age. So we've been very happy with the program and its uptake and its success, and now it's on a sustainable path forward, which we appreciate too.
That's great. And what percentage, I don't know if you'll know this offhand, is the medical costs in the pension? Because that was a
medical costs, yeah.
big buck number, if I recall.
Well, there's a couple of issues with the medical costs on the pension fund. One we were talking about just today, actually, is that on the teacher system, for a period of time, they were actually using the pension dollars to pay for teacher health care. So then they undid that and separated it, I think in 2000 and in the 2000s. So the teacher system's a little bit further behind than the state system. But that being said, we did also commit to pre-funding healthcare, or what's called OPEB, other post-employment benefits. So the OPEB funds, we're just starting this process, but they went from either negative funding or 0% funding, depending on if it was the state or the teachers, to now at like 16% and 13% funding. So they're getting there. There's like $220 million, I think, on the state side, $160 million now on the teacher side. Right. Just a few years ago, those numbers were zero.
Right.
So we need them to be like $1 billion in each, but we're getting there. We've started a process, and it takes time.
Just make you feel good. You're going in the right direction.
Exactly.
I was blown away when you got the deal you got with the teachers and the state employees.
Yeah, we're very happy about that with HealthSpring.
I was very surprised and grateful to them.
Well, here's the story on that, right? I mean, it speaks to what's happening in healthcare across the board, right, in Vermont. But we got this notice request for retired teachers. We are responsible for procuring their health care and retirement. So there's about 8,000 or so retired teachers and dependents. So Blue Cross gave us a renewal offer of 50%, 50%. And we said, geez, we don't want to have any of the teachers lose or change their health care.
Right.
People don't like those kind of transitions. Healthcare is so important to people. But 50% is a significant increase. Can people afford that?
Yep.
So we went out into the marketplace and were able to find a plan that was, I think it was just about 15% increase year over year. It was a company called HealthSpring. It meant that the state of Vermont saved that 1 year $20 million by going with HealthSpring instead of that 50% rate increase. But the thing about that is it's not just $20 million in 1 year, it's $20 million this year and the year after and the year after, because it's not built into the base cost, right? So we've been very happy with HealthSpring from a financial outcome, but also happy in terms of the network they've been able to provide, and they provide the same benefits. So, we always have to work out the kinks with a new provider, a new health insurer, and we've been working through that. But generally, I've heard really good things about HealthSpring.
Because I know the governor was talking about, and I always get these Medicaid, Medicare, Plan B, and he was looking to see if we should do that.
Yeah.
And my concern was, of course, I was always in an exempt position, so I wasn't in the union. But after the first year, they might offer us something because they wanted us. But after the subsequent years, we don't have the union or the numbers to really force them or encourage them to keep us at a low rate. We're sort of at their mercy, and that's what was bothering me.
Yeah, no doubt. And on our side, on the teacher side, we're there to help regulate the contract and make sure that we don't have a situation where they're treating our members unfairly or raising the rates in a way that's
I mean, it sounds great when you listen to the commercials, but
when Joe Montana or somebody,
exactly. But I am grateful beyond belief that I've got that supplemental coverage as a retiree. And I've told a couple of people, they're complaining about the salary. I said, wait till you retire, you'll be lighting candles. Because I talk to other friends who are independently. They don't have a state government behind them, and they've had to pay individual rates, and
they're enormous.
I don't know how they have money for food.
Yeah, no, they're enormous.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly right.
It's scary, so thank you. Thank you. Anyway, we were talking a little bit about debt management and the bonds, and that's when I think when we were having this whole discussion, they had projected 8% at one time, and I thought, where do you get that 8%? Because back then it was 3 and 4% if you're interested, but you just said they're getting all kinds of great returns.
Well, so our current assumed rate of return is 7%. So you might think it's not a big difference, but 8 to 7 was a pretty big
on
difference.
the amount of money we're talking about,
Yeah,
it is.
for sure.
Yeah.
They did get 14% this year. Last year was over 10%, but that 7% is an average over time, right?
Huh.
So you go back just
So better than 3 or 4.
yeah, but you go back just a few years ago. I think it was 2021. And we had a big negative year, right? So it wasn't just that it was 3 or 4, but it was actually negative growth, right? So, and then it takes a while to build up back from that. So when you average it out, you want it to be 7% or higher.
So speaking of investments and things, have they been talking about fossil fuel still?
I haven't.
I missed that this year.
Well,
have they given up?
Well, one of the things one of the places that conversation led to, there are 2 things. One was to look at how much fossil fuel stocks are actually in the system, and it ended up being a relatively small amount, like I think maybe it was 2%.
Oh.
And it had to come down from a higher percentage.
Yeah.
So just we're moving from a risk standpoint, from my perspective, we're moving in the right direction, because those companies are not going to be as successful in the next 30 years as they have been in the last 30 years.
Right.
Like they're going to be interrupted by everything we're facing in the global climate crisis.
Yeah, right. With energy.
So there's a risk rationale for limiting your exposure. The other thing it did was it caused VPIC to look at creating sort of a carbon neutral portfolio, and they've been working on that. So it's not necessarily eliminating certain stocks, but it's trying to find a way to have your portfolio more broadly have a neutral impact on the environment.
I remember years ago they were giving Beth a real hard time. Beth Pierce is the prior treasurer, and they wanted her just to yank it and pull out the stocks that were related to that. And she said, no, they make money. My job is to make sure the pension plan is sustainable and making money. And so, no.
Yeah.
And I thought, yay, Beth. I mean, you don't damage the pension. That's your job.
Yeah.
Is to make sure we're all whole. Thank you.
Well, that, and then, there's about 60,000 people that are associated with our 3 pension systems, whether they're actively working or whether they're fully retired or whether they have some amount of service in the system. So, you have 60,000 people that are in some way are depending on these 3 systems. You want to make sure they have that they have a secure, dignified retirement.
The municipal service, the municipal plans always seem to do well, and I'm not quite sure how that works, but maybe it's whoever's on their committee or something, because they always seem to
they were
be right up there with above us.
They were in a good funded position.
Yeah.
They were just in the mid-70s, so the state employee system's catching up to them, but they had a couple of down years in terms of their funded ratio, but we implemented some changes relatively quickly to try to get them moving back in the right direction.
How did you get involved in knowing all this stuff? I'm sitting here and it's sort of, all right, think about this. I mean, I'd have to think about it first. Is that part of what you were taught in school or you learned? Or because you were over in financial management?
Yeah, Department of Financial Regulation, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, it's interesting because like during the pandemic, there was a lot of
Our savior.
requirement to know a lot of numbers and figure out how the numbers impacted our policy and impacted people and which numbers were important. And I, even as a little kid, I loved baseball and I loved baseball statistics. So I would always think about, what are the type of players you need to build a good team and a good pitching staff and all that kind of thing. So it's always just been, numbers always come a little bit easier to make.
I always just ask how much is available for spending.
Yeah.
that was my, I'm not very good
So if you
at
know the
this.
numbers, you can make that number bigger.
Well, that's it. But anyway, so I've made a whole bunch of lists here, but about what, so Brooke Pages, we have to talk about him later. So Vermont citizen bonds, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, for sure. So, the citizen bonds, when we do a bond offering, we always provide an opportunity for Vermonters to be able to buy part of the offering, because otherwise it usually goes to a large broker that then sells them to large institutional clients or maybe very wealthy individual clients. So the citizen bond's an opportunity to actually allow Vermonters to buy them. Now, we wish we could make it in even smaller increments, but we went from making the minimum amount $5,000 down to $1,000. So $1,000 is much more accessible for people to be able to buy, a municipal bond if
Yeah.
they so choose. It gets a little bit more challenging when you get to smaller increments for, reasons that have to do with administration from the broker side. But we want as many Vermonters to have access and want them to buy
Yeah,
as much
you're
as.
supporting the state.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cool.
And we had a pretty significant amount purchased this year, which was a little bit of an uptick from previous years. So we were happy with that. And
That's great.
we did a little bit more outreach and we did a little bit more
I was going to
messaging
ask you
around
how
it.
you let people know and how do you do that?
I think so. There's all that there's different audiences for different social media,
Right,
and I
true.
think we landed on bond buyers probably spend time on LinkedIn. So I think we did advertising on LinkedIn to
that's
make them
good.
aware of the bond offering. Yeah,
Because I've always thought about that. I used to do T-bonds a lot
yeah.
in my youth, but not anymore. So anyway, when is the next bond sale? When can we look for that?
Yeah, so it probably will not be until next summer. So we did one in December of last year, and they aren't free to do a bond offering, right? We have a lot of professionals that have to be involved. There's costs that are associated with it. So we try to bundle up as many projects and investments as we need to make that dollar amount that we're asking for as high as possible. But right now we
Do
only
you do that through a broker, like a third party, or do you do it directly?
when we actually sell, we'll do it through a broker.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of determining what the amount is that
That's
we're
you.
going to go out, that's our office in connection with finance and management
Yep.
and the governor's administration. Basically, how many projects have been funded or need to be funded, so that we need to go out and borrow this money that's been
Right.
set aside under the capital bill. And right now, we only have about $20 million in projects, so we don't want to do a bond offering that's that small because there are built-in costs to doing it.
Sure.
So we'll wait till it gets a little bit
Good.
bigger and the need gets a little bit bigger
That's
and
great.
try to do more like 80 million or 100 million if we
Whoa.
can.
Gets me some of those. So, I wanted to talk a little bit because I found S328. I can't read my own writing. S328. That's an interesting bill. Act 179. You had a lot of changes to your investment capacity and the caps on all your investments. Is that?
That's our treasurer's omnibus bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love omnibus bills. We called them the Christmas tree bills, but
Well, you always
same
go in and
thing.
say, oh, it's just technical items, right? And
Yeah,
then-
well, I read this a couple of times, but it sounded like you did well.
Yeah, well, we got it passed, which we were happy about,
Yeah.
and it did a number of things. One thing it did was it helped put our Vermont Saves program that we talked about,
Yes.
on a sustainable path forward. Because we did get one-time money when we asked for the program to be set up a few years ago. I think we had $750,000. Now, in Maine, they asked for $1.5 million, and in Delaware, they had a lot more money than that. So we had asked for the least amount of money, and then after 2 years, we had exhausted it all, and we probably are about 3 years or 4 years away from the funds being large enough that they're bringing in fee revenue to keep it fully sustainable. So we needed to bridge it between now and then, and we found an option to be able to do that with our unclaimed property money, and the
Right.
legislature agreed
You
with
still
us.
have my $25. I haven't claimed it yet.
Well,
Does that
always-
grow? That doesn't grow, though, does it?
doesn't grow, so you
No.
should claim
I was
it.
thinking maybe $1,000 would come my way.
But we did make it easier to claim unclaimed property. We
Online?
Well, yeah, both online and just sending in a claim form, either
Oh.
way you want to do it. But we increased the dollar amount, from like $250
Oh,
up
for
to
that
$1,000.
Express?
Yeah.
Well, I forget what they called it here.
Yeah, the
something.
Express program.
Express
And then it also allows us to expand something we call our money back program. So this is something we started where we use information that the state already has on individuals and match it up with our own database. So information at the tax department about information at our unclaimed property department. So we can verify your identity. And then once we have your identity verified, we know this money is yours. We know that you have a mailing address that's good. We'll send you a letter saying you have $350 coming to you.
Right.
Be on the lookout for a check. and then we'll just send the checks
Great.
2 or 3 weeks later.
But you're putting this money to use while you have it, right? And-
No doubt, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting money returned from investments.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
assuming.
But we always, we definitely put the money to use.
Yeah.
A couple of different ways where, money is being earned in terms of interest or income. The legislature usually takes a proportion in something called the general fund transfer that helps fund the budget. But ultimately, we think the money is better in Vermonters' pockets, right?
Right.
There's a story from a couple of years ago. I was going down to the Putney Town meeting in 2024. And whenever we go to the town meetings, we'll bring the unclaimed property list.
For that town?
For that town,
Oh,
yeah.
that's great.
So I had the Putney list, and I was in Brattleboro the night before, and I stayed at my parents' house, and I said, "Hey, Dad, you ever heard of this person? He has $38,000
Whoa.
of unclaimed property." And he said, "Yeah, I've been doing his taxes for 40 years, So I said, "Oh, wow, can you get me his number?" And,
That's great.
and I called him the next day and said, his daughter answered, and I said, "This is Mike Piechiak, I'm the state treasurer. I have $38,000 for your dad."
Anybody want it?
Yeah, well, she didn't believe me, I don't think, originally.
Sure not.
And then once they finally understood that this was a legitimate thing and that I was trying to get the money back to them and we were able to do it, we got a nice note from the gentleman saying, we really appreciated
Great,
everything.
yeah.
But then we got this note from the daughter a couple weeks later that said, we did not know about this money. We would never have looked for it. But the fact that we got it means our 98-year-old dad can live in his home for another year. So it just talked about
cool.
the impact of putting that money
Right.
back into Vermonters' pockets.
Right. That's great. I wonder, it would be interesting, I don't want to know because it's none of my business, but where that money came from that
Well,
you
usually
wouldn't,
when
you wouldn't
people
miss it.
when people usually have big amounts, it's from generally it's somebody's retirement that maybe they were at a job for a couple of years and the spouse didn't know about it and the spouse passes away, or the spouse had a life insurance policy from a job or from a credit union or something, they weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
So it's usually something like that that results in those pretty significant.
Surprise, surprise. You can surprise me anytime you want, my friend. Just, I'll give you my number. That's really great.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
so-
great that you did that.
Yeah, and it's like, we had no idea what the financial circumstances were of this individual. We didn't know how old he was. We didn't know
Yeah,
anything. But
that's really something.
again, just to be able to get, whether it's $38 or $38,000, you never know how impactful that money's going to be
sure.
to somebody.
Just arrived at the right time. That's great. All right. Well, it's almost time to switch over, but we have the omnibus. I can't even say that word. Omnibus bill. We talked about it, and I know when I was in the State House, you always worried about a bill that looked like the omnibus bill because you knew everybody and his brother was going to add something to it to make your life miserable. But I looked past, you have every year you've got one of these bills and it adds up to a few pennies.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, they've got a list about every year and then how much the bill was.
Oh, I see.
It's pretty cool. I looked through it all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been fortunate. We have a great relationship with the legislature. I mean, our proposals that we've had that we've put out, our Vermont Saves proposal passed unanimously, our medical debt relief proposal passed unanimously. We had a drug discount card program that we
Yes,
proposed.
thank you for that.
And that was almost unanimous.
Yep.
But we not only is our legislation generally bipartisan, but also unanimous. So we like to continue to work with all parties over in the legislature.
Now, I know you were pushing it when babies were born to
Oh, yeah.
give them, but it looks like the feds
Well,
stole your idea.
maybe. I think ours is better still, but
Really?
yeah. Well, but we're moving forward with that. We just actually had an event in Burke yesterday.
Oh,
So the program is now recast a little bit.
Yeah.
It's called the First Steps Forward. So it's including the money for babies, the baby bond,
Right.
but it's also including a direct cash payment to new moms. So money that will go to them every month and during the first year of the baby's life.
Wow.
To provide a little bit more financial security and a little bit less anxiety and allow the mom to be focused on what she wants to be focused on and we want her to be
great.
focused on caring for that baby. Also, we'll provide diapers for that new mom, which are significantly expensive.
there's such a need out there.
Yeah, and then maternal mental health care as well, pre and postnatal care. So bundled together. It's going to be the first super bundle, they're calling it, in the country in terms of a pilot project where you're making an immediate investment in the child and family's financial success. You're making a long-term investment in terms of the baby bond, $3,200 put aside for that child. And eligibility for this is anyone that's born into poverty, so born on Medicaid in the Northeast Kingdom. And we'll hope to launch the program next July, and it will run for 3 years. So about 450 babies would be in the program if, at the end of the 3 years. So we think it's just a great program in terms of the immediate impact, the long-term impact, the health impact, the financial impact. We need to raise the money ourselves at the Treasurer's Office, sort of through grants and philanthropic investments and things of that nature. I think the overall budget, it's over $10 million that we need, but we have over...
I think you'll get it for that need, because in my church, we collect those things, and the need is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's just staggering. And I think you feel so bad that you want to...
No doubt.
You want to jump in and help.
So I think we're at about 70% funded. We have more to go, but we're feeling really good about where we are. And again, like I said, we hope to launch it next summer. And then we'll evaluate it. We have some evaluators that will work and say, hey, these were the financial impacts and benefits. These were the health impacts and benefits. These were the emotional impact and benefits. And then, if things turn out such that the investment's worth it, we'll suggest to the legislature that they think about making it a permanent program.
Maybe the feds will catch up with you and realize that this is better. Because when I heard that, I went, uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's a lot of, there's
so.
3 different things that the Trump administration has done that we have also worked on. Our Vermont Saves program, which Trump is calling I think it's called Trump 401k or something. Our drug discount card program, which he's calling Trump RX. Our baby bonds program, which he's calling Trump accounts.
Maybe you have a spy here who's letting you know what you're doing.
We don't name them after ourselves is the big difference, I think so.
Yeah. I must say that one with the Kennedy Center was that wasn't good. But that's because I just love John Kennedy, so there you go. Anyway, there was another treasurer's, that was the omnibus bill, Vermont Savings funding. There was some funding there for to get Vermont Saves self-sufficient.
Yep.
On unclaimed properties, as we've talked a little bit about that, which is great. And everything seems to be in order. Doing good, Mike.
Well, I appreciate that.
Oh, no, we're going to switch hats. Oh, perfect. Anyway, so... Oh, who's H. Brooks Page? H. Brooks Page is running against you, and I have somebody's name, Zachary.
Right.
Progressive.
Right.
What's he or she's background? Is it a he?
It's a he, but I don't know. I've never met him, so I don't know much about him.
Things are just sort of starting now, anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Heating up eventually, but. Can't imagine you have any problem after all your signs on my lawn. So, there you go. I love it because it's just Bruce put it out, and he stands it right up on the top of our little hill, so everybody can see it.
Well, tell him thank you.
So you'll have Vine Street too. So they do. They're funny. They come down and ask me about my signs and who's who.
That's funny.
So there you go. All right. So. We talked a little bit about you being in financial regulations to do this background for your for the campaign, and you really did flag. Well, that was Newport, I do believe, going
JP
way
fraud.
back.
Yeah,
I tell that story all the time when Mr. Palmisano said there was a. No, is that his last name?
Parmelo.
Parmelo. Oh my God, sorry, Ernie. Parmelo said there was something wrong with the finances.
Yeah.
That should have been an alert.
No doubt. I think it really certainly was. I mean, I think Tony Parmelo was really, honestly, the first person that raised any red flag, and he did it. We did it through, I don't know, 50 subpoenas and reviewing 120 bank accounts and hundreds of thousands of financial documents. I think Tony Parmelo just had an instinct that something didn't smell right.
I mean, and he's Mr. Finance in Vermont, as far as I'm concerned.
No doubt.
I mean, he says something, you better pay attention.
Yeah, for sure.
And he said the finances don't work. He pretty much spelled it out.
Yeah.
And did we pay attention?
Yeah.
No, then you started it, and that was good for you.
Well, I paid attention.
No, that was big bucks. That was serious.
Yeah, $450 million in terms of the overall amount of money that came into those projects at JPEAK, about 8 different projects. And significant fraud, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars that were diverted for personal use, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars that were diverted and mismanaged within the projects themselves. So,
And the hole's still there, isn't it?
the hole's still there, unfortunately, in Newport. I mean, we're
too
trying
bad.
to see if, we're continuing always to be creative about how can you solve for that. But in terms of the other assets of the resort and the community, Jay got sold to a strong
Right.
buyer. Burke got sold to a great buyer, the Graham family,
Yep.
that is doing an excellent job with that mountain. The resorts, those are still job producers
Yep.
and income generators. So
But what a perfect place, you're right on Lake Manfromagog,
Yeah.
I mean, the views, the whole town is wonderful.
yeah, no doubt. So there's still some work that needs to be done in terms of rectifying the fraud and the impact. But a lot of the investors, not all of them got their full investment
good.
back.
That's good.
But they did get their green cards, and they have gotten some of their investment back. So everybody, it could have been significantly worse. And we're always appreciative of the work of Mike Goldberg, who was the receiver that
Yep,
came in
right.
and did a lot of
Pulled it all together.
yeah, I mean, one of the big things was a year after the fraud was filed and announced, within a year, the exact date, Mike Goldberg was able to secure a $150 million settlement with Raymond James that brought in a ton of money to help the resort, recover from that fraud and fill in a lot of holes.
Great. The former owner of Sugarbush,
Winsmith.
Vin Smith, and I talked about, because he had a project.
Yeah, and he did
of
it
EB, and he
perfectly
said,
right.
Yeah, because he said it was small.
Yeah.
He could contain it and knew what was going on. He said, that was just so big.
Yeah.
You couldn't possibly track it all.
And Wynn had everything meticulously detailed. I mean, he came from a Wall Street
Dad.
background. Yeah,
Exactly.
And he did it the right way. It was, if you wanted a model for how to do it, it was Sugarbush.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Wynn was great. I read his book. He's
Oh yeah.
a great guy. Anyway, so your goals for getting out there and campaigning
Yeah. Well,
to return, what, do you have a, stand-up, what do they call them? The speech that they,
Oh,
elevator
yeah.
speech for the campaign?
Your stump speech,
Yes,
right?
some speech. Thank you.
Well, I think, broadly, the things that we're focusing on to run for a third term, in large part, are things we've been focused on the first two terms. I remember being in the governor's cabinet in 2019, and we'd have cabinet meetings every week, and we would oftentimes talk about the various challenges that were confronting Vermont. And we weren't always talking about the solutions to those challenges.
Right.
And I think that is something that more broadly happens in our public discourse.
Right.
So I really was concerned about the direction our state was heading, and I was kind of concerned that we weren't talking about solutions or paths forward and ways to get young people to stay here and provide opportunity for everybody. And so that was something that really motivated me to want to get into elected public service, was the concern about the direction of our state. I often talk about Vermont being a place that has advantages as a state. Our natural beauty is a big advantage. There are
Right.
very few places that are as beautiful as our state. I would suggest maybe nowhere. Our outdoor recreational opportunities, whether it's in the fall or the summer or the winter, there's plenty of opportunities to get outside, very accessible. And then the sense of community that we have in our state.
That's true.
Deep, deep sense of community. We show up for each other. We know about each other. We care for each other. And that I have not seen in any part of the country that I've ever lived or visited. It's very unique in Vermont. But we also have to be able to afford to live here in our state. And right now it feels like you really have to want to live here. Like you have to sacrifice something, whether you're a person or whether you're a business. There's something that you sacrifice to be able to live in our state. And that shouldn't be that way. It should be that
agreed.
you want to be here because there are opportunities for you as a young person. There are opportunities for you as someone with a family. There's a place where you can afford to live as an older person. And we're not there. In many respects, I think we've gotten even further away from having that vision become a reality.
You have to feel a sense of return on investment.
Yeah.
Like that you're putting in all this money, even education, I think that's why people get so angry. If they could see that the kids were high on the performance level and you're getting a lot of return, but if you're spending money and the numbers are going down,
Yeah,
you
it's
get
concerning.
a little upset.
Yeah, no doubt. So, that's the sort of the framework for which I was
Right.
thinking when I decided I want to run for public office. And we've been focusing on that challenge. How do we create programs and opportunities for Vermonters to give them, financial resources and financial empowerment? So providing retirement for individuals that didn't have retirement,
That's
eliminating medical debt for people that were burdened by unreasonable medical debt, providing this pharmacy discount card program to help people
Yes,
save
that's great.
hundreds of dollars a month on their pharmaceutical costs. We have a program called Invest in Vermont that helps us fund and finance new housing creation
Oh, I was
too.
going to ask you about housing, because
Yeah.
I read, how does that work?
So, we I came in office and I said, geez, one thing that we have at our disposal is this program, 10% Vermont. It allows us to invest up to 10% of the state's cash into
Right.
economic development here in Vermont rather than at a bank or on Wall Street. So we said, okay, like housing is clearly our number one economic issue. Let's figure out a way where we can help finance more housing projects. Because what I kept hearing from people was, it is too expensive to build, and at the interest rates, which were very high and are still high, we can't finance the construction and then afford to, rent it or sell it on the other side of
Right.
it. So we need to bring down the cost of it. And we did that through providing low interest loans through our 10% in Vermont program. So we've supported about 1,700 new units of housing across
Nice.
Vermont, with more underway. We actually asked the legislature to expand our ability to go from 10% of cash to 12.5% of cash, and they agreed to do that
Great.
this year. And we've announced an RFP that is due on September 4th for folks to,
Excellent.
submit their projects to us.
That's great. I know when I was working in the Department of Labor that we were talking about, when I was there were a lot of builders who, they would come and I said, what do you need from us? And they'd say, we need, this is mostly about Act 250, time
Right, time.
and how much money. And I said, just tell us those two things, and then we can decide whether it's doable for us, but everything keeps moving when you jump into Acts 250. It's sort
Yeah,
of-
no doubt.
You have no answer.
Well, you need certainty, right? As
Yeah,
a
for
business
sure,
owner.
and that's how they make their money, and
Yeah.
and why not? That's their business. And I think I noticed during because we're small and that doesn't help us much, during the flood, a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, they had to redo their flooring.
Yeah,
They couldn't find anybody. They were all booked up for
yeah, forever.
the 5 we have to do it,
Yeah.
whatever it was. Yeah, they couldn't do it. That's why a lot of them stayed closed so long.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so we have to do something about getting people to do the work. I think when I was in transportation, I forget the percentage of how many older people we have out there
Yeah.
that are, slated to retire in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, when you talk
Then
about
what?
right, exactly right, and that's why housing, in my opinion, is such a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yep.
Because Department of Labor estimates that there's going to be tens of thousands of people that are going to be retiring out of our workforce over the next 5 years. Right, that
Wow.
we're an older state, we have an older workforce.
Yep.
So if we have tens of thousands of people retiring, not all of them are leaving Vermont, to go to Florida or South Carolina or someplace. Some of them may leave. A lot of them will maybe stay here in the summer and
go
then
down,
go down.
right.
A lot of people just stay in Vermont. From our retirees, that I mentioned in our pension system, about 75% of them stay in Vermont.
Wow.
So just as a proxy, we can assume that tens of thousands of these folks that are leaving are actually going to be staying,
Right.
leaving our workforce but staying in Vermont. So how do we replace them in our workforce unless we build more housing for new people to
And
be able to
do
come
you
here?
know the name Catherine Dimitri?
I don't-
She's on the planning commission in somewhere in Newport or in the Northeast Kingdom somewhere, and she was on the show. I've known her for years, and she said a phenomenon these days is that apartments are being rented for one person only.
Right, for sure.
So that's completely changed. There's no families. It's
No
all
doubt.
one person. So
So
that's
one of the big things, because people will say, how do we have a housing crisis when our population hasn't grown that much?
Right, no.
But
It's different.
one of the things that has changed is how we live. We used to be closer to 3 people in a household,
right.
and now it's closer to 2 people in a household. So even if our population
Hmm.
didn't change, the way we're living, not getting married as often or staying married, not living intergenerationally,
Right.
not having roommates, that's required us to have more housing for the same population.
As my mother always pushed that we should all be living together. But we dissuaded her of that. It doesn't work. Everybody's so independent.
I know.
You're not dependent on your family anymore as you get older.
Yeah.
And as much as we love Mom, but if it just wouldn't work. But anyway. So how are you approaching this campaign? Knocking on doors, going to as many group meetings as you can, or?
Yeah, well, like every campaign, I mean, my first campaign in 2022, we visited every single town in Vermont,
Oh, good
all
for you.
252 towns. We had more time then because I wasn't in the office. Now you have to balance, the work of the office with the work of campaigning. But that idea of getting out and about to every community is something we continue to, try to have as a standard. So whether that's going and supporting other candidates, other legislative candidates, and going to their events, particularly once the primary is over, and we
Then
know,
you know who's
yeah,
the final slate.
exactly. We don't get involved in primaries on the Democratic side, just as a policy. We let those play out. But supporting those candidates, getting around the state in that way, doing house parties
Yep.
Across the state, doing events across the state. But also in our job, I get around the state quite a bit too, just in the Kingdom yesterday.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so whether it's through our office or through our campaign, we are interacting with Vermonters on a regular basis and hearing about what their concerns are and what they want their government to do for them. And that's really, I think, the most important thing, is to stay connected to the folks that you're serving.
Is there anything that you've heard that we haven't? I mean, it's all pretty much the economy, healthcare, cost of living. It's all this same group of issues. Is
Yeah.
there anything unusual that you heard that kind of went, whoa?
Well, the only thing that has changed from a broad perspective is that it was housing, when I first ran.
Right.
And even in the last time I ran in 2024. And now I hear a lot more people talk about healthcare, whether it's an individual, whether it's a small business, the crushing burden of healthcare costs.
Yeah,
And
that's
that, I think, is now, if it's not our number one problem, it's tied with housing. And they really are intertwined in many ways. But our rising cost of healthcare is the thing that I've been hearing much more regularly than just even 4 years ago.
I was prescribed a drug and they handed it to me in the drugstore. It was $300.
Yeah,
I said, take it back. I forget it.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not.
doubt.
Every month I'm going to shell out
Every month.
$300 for.
well, so
a
this
couple of
drug
pills.
discount card program that we passed called ArrayRx, is worth taking a look at.
That's
So 80% generally, on average, 80% savings on generic drugs, 20% savings on name brand drugs. So we need to do a lot more to bring down costs, but it's a start in the right direction.
I had a drug that was, I don't know how much money it was. I called up Jerry Fry, who was in personnel head of. I said, Jerry, what happened to the 80/20? He goes to me, Pat, that was 80/20.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, what does this cost? And he told me. I went, oh my God,
Exactly.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, the cost of pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
the cost of going to the hospital, I mean, just,
And the lack of just realize the lack of workforce is killing us.
no doubt.
Every store I go to, we don't have enough staff.
For sure.
Restaurants are closed sometimes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, it's the same at a hospital. I mean, there are not enough
Yeah.
nurse practitioners, not enough doctors, not enough primary care doctors, not enough nurses. That makes
it's
everything
really scary.
harder to access, it's harder to get care.
Yep.
But then it's also more expensive for hospitals to be able to provide the care that they
Well,
need to.
yeah, I just was making an appointment and I got one, and she said, "You want to schedule it out, couple of out, because we're backed up 3 months." I said,
Yeah.
You could be dead by then, but don't let that. It's real. They feel bad too because they want to
Yeah, no
help
doubt.
you, and they're just stuck. So it's sad.
For sure. I mean, I had to get a new primary care doctor, and I started to start the process of getting an appointment and an annual physical last September, and I'll get in this September.
Oh,
so
stop.
it took about a
Yeah,
year.
that's
Yeah.
terrible. But I must say, in fairness, I should have said that because if you really are sick,
Right.
somebody sees you,
No
whether
doubt.
it's primary
But
or
we,
up at
but
the
we need to
hospital.
be moving sort of ahead
Yeah,
of that, right? We
right.
want to be doing preventative care and making sure people are, if they have some issue with their blood pressure or
Right.
cholesterol, or they have some drug that would be helpful to them in some way, or some medicine, So we want to be moving upstream and trying to defray some of those costs by getting people and also having better health outcomes too.
Yes, for sure. My husband was sick, and I asked Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice, because I had been on their board, to get him signed up for the health care, where you take your own blood pressure,
Yeah,
your weight.
yeah.
And the minute it was off, he got a call.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
For
Telehealth,
sure.
that's what it was.
Yeah, so they
And it was
intervene,
great.
at the right time,
Yep.
and they're able to really, again, have a better health outcome, and it costs less money.
Yep, yeah, that was a wonderful system. So we have a couple of minutes, and my phone just went off. Sorry about that, I thought I was on mute. But could you talk a little bit about why we should bring you back again?
Yeah, well, I've loved this job at the treasurer's office. I want to run to continue the work that we've been doing, making sure that our Vermont Saves program is growing and becoming even more accessible to many small businesses and individual employees as well. Want to make sure our medical debt relief program is followed through, and we're eliminating that $100 million of medical debt. We want to continue to invest in new housing. We have more authority now to invest again in more housing. We want to set up this medical drug discount card program, which we'll do in our second term. And we want to see this First Steps Forward initiative through as well. So these are the kind of creative problem-solving policy solutions that we're bringing to the table, and hope that Vermonters will appreciate that and decide that they want to give me another term as treasurer.
Well, they certainly should be excited, because you've got so many programs for our benefit going on. I think it's great. I just hope they pay attention out there. It's hard to get people to understand what's going on.
Especially during the summer.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like what? Well, because Ben and I do this, Ben Kinsley and I do this thing where we talk about bills that have passed.
Right.
And you won't believe the people that call it, what?
Yeah.
Too late, you should have paid attention. It's signed and will be delivered. Michael, I wish you a lot of luck.
Well, thank you, Pat. I appreciate your time and appreciate you having me back on.
No problem. Anytime you want to get word out, let us know, because we have access to quite a few Vermonters.
Well, thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont. Bye.